What is going on? It's Alex coming back at you with another video, and today we're going to be reviewing the Draft Network's 2-round mock draft. Now, if you are new, feel free to like, comment, subscribe. Everything helps. Below my face is my board. Below that are all the great ways to get involved in the community, as well as check out our two sponsors of the show, Olipop as well as UnderDog Fantasy. Now, this was a couple days ago. It is by someone who I got to see in Mobile and Damian Parsons, so very excited to see what is happening. Of course, yes, there has been some free agency moves, and that's why I'm going to be commenting over it, because then we could talk about some alternate moves with what has already gone on. Let's get right into this. Of course, we don't want to make this too long of a video because we want to have a good time while also making it efficient. But at pick number 1, the Chicago Bears go Caleb Williams. It makes sense at this point. Don't know where they're going to send Justin, but Justin's value is just dropped off a cliff. I don't know if the Bears will be in the market for trading out of this pick now. I mean, I think that it's very stupid to pass on potentially a legitimate franchise quarterback for someone that you're still debating. But, I mean, the Bears also have this pick because they gave it to a franchise that is not their own because they trade out the number 1 overall pick. So maybe they could try to see if lightning strikes twice. But Caleb Williams, best player in the class. At pick number 2, the Washington Commanders go Jayden Daniels. I think that there is going to be a stronger sentiment that Drake Maye actually is here. I think it's smokescreen season, so that's why Drake Maye has been falling, so to speak, to QB3, if not QB4. He is my QB3. Jayden Daniels is my QB2, but, I just think that the durability concerns certainly make me question how confident I would be in taking Jayden over Drake, but Drake is not shy of taking contact either. Both of them are doing an awful job in terms of preserving their bodies, so to speak. I'm just going to be completely honest. I'm not a huge fan of how comfortable I am with the top of the QB class. I really love Caleb Williams. After that, I really start having some legitimate questions as to whether this is going to be worth it compared to some of the other amazing talents that are in this class, especially if you can trade back and still acquire said talents. But Jayden Daniels would be an upgrade. I think he would end up working well in this team, especially if they end up getting offensive line talent, which this is 2 rounds, so we get to see what that's all about. Patriots go Drake Maye, of course, to get the final part of that trio of quarterbacks. People think that there is going to be this, random surge of JJ McCarthy above Drake Maye. I don't know how you could ever justify that. Drake Maye is legitimately better, probably in every aspect, than JJ McCarthy. Maybe except pure mobility, but Drake Maye is also a bigger guy. So, I just don't really understand that, and I'm also not really a Drake Maye truther. I'm more of a pessimist on Drake Maye than anything. Cardinals go Marvin Harrison Jr. It's the guy who falls down to him. I mean, he's a great player. He's my number 4 player in the class. He's awesome. I have a wide receivers video out where I break down the top 16 receivers in the draft. I technically did it twice, so you get to see how my opinion changed over the combine, but primarily focus on the one post-combine. Also have a top corners video that just came out where you get to see the top 17 corners, and I have some very unique rankings, which you'll still see some of them below my face, but you can get a lot more in-depth description on that video. Vikings trade up with the Chargers and drafted J.J. McCarthy. I personally think this would be a mistake, but it does feel like it's the more realistic thing to do. Chargers receive some great draft capital, and then they get to end up moving back. Minnesota gets to get up and get their guy that they think could be the guy of the future to compete with Sam Darnold. I don't think Sam Darnold cancels out a quarterback by any stretch of the imagination. About $10 million is about the running rate of backups at this point. Marcus Mariota even signed that in this past offseason, or the offseason before. So I'm not really too concerned with that. I do think they are gearing up to be able to go after a quarterback, but they at least have an insurance policy if all goes wrong. At 6, the Giants go Malik Neighbors. Bringing Drew Luck in as a backup certainly does feel like they're gearing up towards going after a wide receiver. Take a shot every time I say the term gearing up today. But Malik Neighbors is a fantastic product. He is my number 5 player in the class. He is super dynamic. I realized on my receiver rankings video, I will say this right now, I did need to adjust most guys' scores by +1. So technically, Malik Neighbors is just under that 80 mark at 79.5, but that is still phenomenal. He's an awesome receiver. Same thing with Marvin Harrison Jr. He dropped to about an 80.5. So essentially, in my algorithm, can call it that. It's, it's a simple equation. It's a sum of all my scores plus basically an addition or subtraction based on whether I had a certain it/ank factor for them. And I had +2 in case of a Y, and then a plus. Essentially, it just moved everything by 1. So that's why their grades will eventually be officially a lower just by a hair, but the rankings are all the same. Pick number 7, Titans go Joe Alt, especially after signing Calvin Ridley today. That's a monstrous deal. I think Calvin Ridley, even at 29, he was pretty much off for 2 years. You're getting someone who has the health of, a 27-year-old. So 3-year deal. It's a little expensive, but I think that's perfectly fine. I think it might have been a 4-year deal off the top of my head. But regardless, a multi-year deal. Yes, he's 29 years old. Struggle with drops, but his route running is unbelievable. He has been the number 1 wide receiver for a team for, a good amount of time there for Atlanta. So to be able to allow him to step into a role year number 2, essentially, of actually playing, I think that it actually might prove to be very much worth it. So Joe Alt is going to be now the number 1. It's going to be essentially be Joe Alt or bust for the Titans there at 7, unless they're feeling very comfortable about going right tackle Fuaga. In case he is not, I don't think Olufashanu is going to garner that type of respect because of his small hands and the way he blocks in the run game, usually indicating that his small hands actually are the issue. Falcons get Jared Verse at selection number 8. They ended up bringing on Darnell Mooney into that receiving core, and they also have Kirk Cousins. So Kirk Cousins, Darnell Mooney, and that weapons core is insane. I always bring up the fact that they should try to go after one more weapon, but it is true. There's a certain point, even if you add Rome Odunze, there's just too many mouths to feed. And I love Dallas Turner a little bit more than Jared Verse, but also I think Dallas Turner at around that 250 frame, which they're both around that frame. But Dallas Turner, technically the superior athlete, in quotes. Both of them are phenomenal. I'm trying to be very nitpicky here. I think Dallas Turner, with his extra speed, is going to be a little closer to Byron Young, which Raheem Morris had there in LA. But I love this for him. Again, there's so many mouths to feed. It used to go Romo Dunze, but now it's like, you got Kyle Pitts, Drake London, Darnell Mooney, and Bijan Robinson. It's kind of difficult to justify adding one more to that list for Kirk. I love Kirk, but you don't need to add another top 10 overall pick into that mix. Bears go Olufashanu. They need to go after wide receiver at this point. They haven't really addressed that at all. They could also go an edge rusher. Olufashanu feels like the bit of a stretch for pick number 9. At pick 10, the Jets go Tali Fuaga. They did end up just bringing on, through a trade, what's his name? Now I'm tripping. He was the former right tackle for the Jets actually a couple years ago. I believe it's Morgan Moses. And obviously, I think that's a good idea. Moses is still a quality starter at, I think he's 35 years old too. Getting up there in age. But he has 1 year left on his contract. That essentially shores up the right tackle spot. Now, if Olufashanu is taken, I think that the Jets would be willing to try Tali out at left tackle. But this is also a spot where maybe they go Rome Odunze. They don't really have a legitimate wide receiver too. So it could be a great opportunity for them to, retool an area that they didn't necessarily focus on that much in free agency. Chargers end up getting Rome Odunze here after releasing Mike Williams today. So he even says Mike Williams' contract ends in 2024 season. Of course, this was a couple of days ago, so the news today, not really applicable to this, but this pick makes even more sense today. Rome Odunze is a fantastic product. Obviously, he's going to be a massive addition to this team, and he would fit that Mike Williams role to a T. So I really do think that Rome Odunze times Quentin Johnston could be the way this team retools for the future, but I just don't know how much of an emphasis Harbaugh is going to put on the receiving position. I'm just not sure exactly, but this is a sick part of the thumbnail that I probably will have. Pick number 12, Broncos go Dallas Turner. I think this is a phenomenal idea. Dallas Turner is a great player. It's hard to see Verse or Turner really getting past 12. I think since the Broncos are in such a retool mode, they could be in the market for moving back. They also lack a good amount of picks this draft for a team that needs a lot. So, especially with Terry and Arnold on the board, I would suggest that the Eagles should be trying to make a heavy move up here with the Broncos for pick number 12. Pick 13, Vegas Raiders go Johnny Newton. I love Johnny Newton. He's a great player. He's not going to be probably the first interior defensive lineman selected over Byron Murphy, but he's still a very talented player. There's something that the NFL offices just do not like about him. I don't understand. Maybe there is a personality concern there. I don't get it. I don't know why he wouldn't compete in the Senior Bowl, because that was his prime opportunity to literally just destroy the competition. I don't fully understand that situation. But his talent on the field has shown that he should be worth a top 15 selection. He's a great player, top 20 on my board. Pick 14, actually, well, I got to mention this, not for the Raiders. He's a top 15 pick for most teams. Obviously, this pick would not be that since they just paid a crap ton of money for Christian Wilkins. Now, how I'd pivot this pick is obviously going Terrion Arnold or Quinion Mitchell. Depending on whatever system you think you're going to try to go for the long run, I know that the ball hawk mentality that AP brings to the table is going to be leaning a little bit more towards Quinion Mitchell, but I just have a weird feeling that we're totally underestimating Terrion Arnold's market value. But regardless, that would be the pick. Obviously, this didn't happen before the Christian Wilkins signing, so it is what it is. Pick 14, the Saints go Tyler Guyton. The Saints, they've been relatively quiet in free agency, to be honest. They don't really have a team that I fully respect, because I think it's kind of standing on a lot of hope rather than a lot of like legitimate formidable opponents or formidable talents. Like Trevor Penning's a failure. The right tackle Ryan Ramchik's been dealing with shit too. And then you look at the quarterback. I mean, Derek Carr is mid. The receiving core, Michael Thomas is never healthy. You got Chris Olave there. That's awesome. But, you really are struggling. You have, I think, the second highest paid running back in Alvin Kamara, who just simply isn't worth it. And then that defense is aging. There's holes in it. You got Demario Davis there when he's like 35 for an extra year. And, that's kind of like the one like shining light, in my opinion. You got Honey Badge back for a year. You might even get rid of Marshawn Lattimore. Like, obviously, you probably would have done that already if that were a necessity. But, the fact that the best players on your team are the ones considered to be moved, that's usually not a good sign. So I'm a little bit worried for the Saints. I hope that they get everything in order. I don't think Tyler Guyton would be the guy for that necessarily. Pick 15, Colts go Brock Bowers. It just seems like if you're going to get a top option, that's going to be the best. Hopefully he gets healthy, because he's been dealing with the tweaked hamstring. That's why he and Amarius Mims did not test at the Georgia Pro Day. Pick 16, Seahawks go Leatu Latu. He's edge number 1 for that franchise guy. I'll respect DeMarcus. I don't see it. Just somebody who lacks any sort of legitimate push on the pocket, but hand technique, unbelievable. One of the best block shedders I've seen. I just don't really think the Seahawks need to be really gunning heavy early on for an edge rusher. I think the Seahawks should honestly be trying to move back ASAP. It's just a situation where you don't have a second round pick. You ended up re-signing Leonard Williams, and it would be a great way to, set yourself up with cheaper talent elsewhere rather than trying to go for the big hitters. Quinion Mitchell goes to the Jaguars at 17. Hard to believe that he'd ever be there. Corner value, I don't think we're really appreciating corner value enough. There's a good chance Quinion Mitchell and Terrion Arnold are gone in the top 10. And we're just not factoring it in. The NFL loves corners. They know that corner always needs to be upgraded. They're always expensive. And you really need to hit on a corner, because this NFL is a very pass-heavy league. So you do need to hit on those corners, and we have 2 top corners in this class. If the Jaguars somehow pull this off, that's an A+, but very hard to think that would be the case. 18, the Bengals go AD Mitchell. Higgins is trying to be moved. That's a big one. I think AD Mitchell would be the right option at this point, unless you want to go Brian Thomas. Both of them, I think, serve a similar role year 1, and I just think AD Mitchell has the higher ceiling past that year. Pick number 19, Rams go Nate Wiggins, 173, a bit scary. I doubt that he'd fill a corner 1 void at 173 pounds. It's not very often that you see corners succeed at that weight. I wasn't a huge fan of when Emmanuel Forbes did it. He dropped significantly on my board. I believe in the talent, but not in him being a true corner 1. And we see what happens when you go up against physical wide receivers when you just do not have that level of, physics is physics. If you're small and there's a big dude who knows how to use that force, your force equals mass times acceleration, dude. Like, you don't have the mass, you're going to be out forced. You get what I'm saying? This is the way. So Nate Wiggins, I'm going to be a little bit on the smaller side. I wouldn't recommend that to the Rams. There's a lot of really talented corners in this class, really talented corners. And I would suggest the Rams should wait until at least round 2 to try to address that. Steelers go J.C. Latham. I would just pray that you can end up getting Amarius Mims. That's for the storyline. Amarius Mims might not be as reliably healthy as J.C. Latham, so maybe Latham might be the better pick. Dolphins go Jackson Powers Johnson, interior offensive lineman out of Oregon. Also got to bring this up for the Steelers. Maybe this, of course, this was before the Deontay Johnson trade. Brian Thomas. At a certain point, you guys start thinking, without any real receiving weapons on our team, except George Pickens, might want to look at a high-end option. But we've been good at sniping guys down the board. But yeah, Dolphins going JPJ. That's a great move. Armstead said that he's planning on coming back. So you need to address the interior. JPJ is also a Dolphins fan, which is awesome. Eagles go Xavier Worthy. You know, looking at the moves the Eagles have made in this offseason so far, getting back Chauncey's great. I mean, I was talking about, Cooper DeJean and essentially putting him into a very similar role that would put Chauncey, but I was like, damn, I want someone who has that energy and spark. And I know a lot of people didn't like the fact that, I was saying this team needed that energy. It looks like you did. So for those of y'all who trying to, be a little bit smarter on that comment, let's maybe pipe it down a little bit, because teams really do, especially ones that have this reputation of power, of energy, of, being a big hitting squad, they need that catalyst. And someone like Cooper DeJean, I have no faith in being that catalyst. That's okay. He can fit on a team that doesn't need another ego, so to speak, in that core, and he could work very, very well. The Eagles needed somebody to be that lightning in a bottle, and they got that. So free agency-wise, the Eagles have done a very solid job. I think they're still looking for another edge rusher because, essentially Sweat, I think, went onto one of his fan pages and said, "I'll miss y'all." So he's going to be gone. They're going to look for another edge rusher. Bryce Huff was on 42% of his overall snaps on the Jets last year. We haven't even seen him at 60+%. And Nolan Smith's going to be there. There's still a chance that you don't even have Hassan on the squad. So there's just a lot to focus on that the Eagles, going after a wide receiver 3 who just ran a fast 40, to me, isn't very fiscally responsible. I'd go after Brian Thomas if you're going to go after a receiver. Xavier Worthy makes no sense to me. Houston Texans go Byron Murphy II out of Texas. That would be the perfect pick for him. They, I believe, even traded away Rankins to the Niners for a 7th round pick. So this makes even more sense. Cowboys going at Fautanu. Left tackle position still up in the air. I think that would be a smart move. And even if he doesn't work as a left tackle, you could put Tyler Smith the left tackle and Fautanu to guard. I think that works. Graham Barton for the Packers. It's a position I've debated as well. I think that, getting some help on the interior of the offensive line. Runyon's gone. Myers should be gone. Sean Ryan is there, but they don't even seem to have a ton of faith in him. I think this wouldn't be an awful idea. Of course, I would still be looking at Cooper DeJean and getting very excited. I know Keyshawn Nixon's back, and, the safety core has been, tweaked quite a bit, but you still could use a young, very viable option who needs to get comfortable in the NFL, because coming off a leg injury, like a leg fracture, to me still, I think people are underplaying how much of a role that plays in someone's mentality. At 26, the Buccaneers go Xavier Legette. So this is, pretty up to date. So I don't know why Xavier Legette at his age would necessarily help out the Buccaneers this much. He's a little bit on the older side. I don't really think this is a great opportunity. You might as well go Brian Thomas, who is still developing, more than Xavier Legette, who I think is a little bit more of a polished product. I don't know if there's much more polishing to be done for him. So I think his ceilings, maybe not polishing isn't the correct term, but I think he's closer to his ceiling than Brian Thomas is. So I'd prefer that 10 out of 10. Cardinals go Kool-Aid. He's a great player. I mean, he's my corner 6 in this class. I love the death, but you can see where they are in terms of how close these guys are clustered. There's essentially a top 3, and then there's a 4 through 6, and then, it's essentially they're grouped. If I wanted to pull that franchise guy, because I love Marcus, I'm going to give him shit. I could essentially do 1A, 1B, and then a 3, and then a 4A, 4B, 4C. I could have done that and just been a total douche, but I'm I'm not going to do that. I'm not going to do that. I know that you guys would like to tear me apart. That's why I made my tiers to be able to explain that as well. But Brian Thomas to the Buffalo Bills would be ridiculous. I love that to death. Gabe Davis is over there in Jacksonville. I don't think the Buffalo Bills have done enough to be able to retool their receiving core, and Brian Thomas would be ridiculously valuable. Somehow, some way, Terrion Arnold falls to 29, which is BS. It's not going to happen. I'm not even really going to address this pick because, on a professional level, you got to at least factor some form of realism in there. That's the equivalent of letting Drake May fall out of the top 10, is letting Terrion Arnold fall to here. Unless he has some crazy criminal record that we don't know about, which he doesn't. I mean, we would have heard about it by now. There's no reason that he'd ever be there at 29, let alone probably pick 9. It's surprising how this just it really makes no sense to me. Ravens go Keon Coleman, top tier receiver. I think that he would work really well for the Ravens. Ran a slow 40, but, in the gauntlet drill, did a phenomenal job. Being one of the fastest, if not the fastest guy there, shows that his play speed is phenomenal. Niners go Kingsley. Going after a right tackle to me is a big plus. The Niners have been retooling the defense, and I think they would be definitely open to getting a new weapon on offense. Chiefs then go Troy Franklin. I think Troy Franklin's gauntlet drill was a disgrace to the wide receiver position. Hate to say it, but I mean, I lost all respect for him, so to speak. He's a talented player, but the fact is he either didn't take it seriously, didn't prepare for it at all, or simply cannot play the game the way the NFL is looking to play it. Like, if you can't actually run in a straight line and catch balls, really, you can't do that. It's kind of a disgrace. And then Troy Franklin also, he essentially is Marquez Valdes-Scantling. We'll just put it there. Panthers then go Ladd McConkey. They ended up trading for Deontay Johnson. Don't talk to me about that. Y'all know I'm a Steelers fan. We got fleeced, bottom line. Ladd McConkey wouldn't really make too much sense to be paired up with Deontay Johnson, but hey, if they end up doing that, that's a lot of separation for a receiving core that did not get a lot of separation. Patriots go to Jayden Sanders. I think that's a way too early. This team needs offensive tackle. I know they brought back Owenu, but that left tackle spot, to me, still needs some help. I don't trust Chukwuma Okorafor by any stretch of the imagination. So I would go offensive line or a weapon here that is not Jatavian Sanders because he doesn't deserve it. Cardinals going Darius Robinson, getting some extra defensive interior help. Not a bad idea. You paid a lot of money, though, for some defensive interior guys who I think could pretty much hold up this same role. It's going to be a little bit interesting to see what they do with Darius Robinson. As well as now I'm tripping on the other guy they drafted in the 3rd round a couple years ago. But essentially, you already have your 270 to 275 plus player to be able to play almost on the inside. Commanders then go Chop Robinson. I think the Commanders need to try to target someone who's going to be a little bit more day one ready, but I can't blame them. Dan Quinn would love to have his own Penn State edge rusher. Chargers then draft Cooper DeJean at 37. If they somehow do that, that'd be insane. They did, I believe, retain Alohi Gilman, so good for them. Pick number 38, Titans go Jalen McMillan. That's essentially, if that ever happened, I'd lose my marbles. Jalen McMillan is far from a 2nd round pick, but this is essentially Calvin Ridley. So I think that the best way to retool this pick is probably to go after a defensive back. I love Renardo Green. He's very smart. He's very physical. I think that'd be just a really top-end option. Another guy to mention is Max Melton, but I do have someone who is higher than this that is still on the board, quite a few of them, as a matter of fact. Giants somehow go and get Amarius Mims at 39. Let's not even talk about that. The Titans could have gotten Amarius Mims and Joe Alt. That would have been ridiculous. Commanders then go Edgerrin Cooper. With the amount of linebackers that the Commanders have now signed, obviously this, again, pre-free agency, I don't think this would ever be in the realm of the possibility for them to draft one, but maybe they're just in the mood to be a dick to the Eagles. Could be that way. But Edgerrin Cooper to Washington pre-free agency would make a ton of sense. Now, not so much. Packers then go TJ Tampa. I'm just not a TJ Tampa guy, to be honest, but I do think continuing to develop that corner core, not a bad idea. Chargers then drafted Blake Corum in the 2nd round. This is way too high. There's a lot of talented running backs in this class that, are relatively the same talent level as Blake Corum that you could probably get even in the 4th. Pick number 43, the Falcons go Ricky Pearsall. It's a wide receiver 3 to add to the mix. I think that's perfectly fine. Vegas Raiders go Michael Penix. I'm trying to remember. So, yeah, you got Aiden O'Connell and then Gardner Minshew. I just don't know if they draft a quarterback this year. Like you're not going to roll into the year with 3 quarterbacks that are starter quality essentially, or rotational starter. Like they can have the starter potential. I just don't know if the Raiders can go QB this year. It's very interesting. I want to see how this unfolds. But Michael Penix Jr. before the signing of Minshew makes a lot of sense. Saints then go Chris Braswell, edge rusher help, and getting a new era in there. Not a bad idea. Cam Hart to the Colts, right down the street there in Notre Dame. Makes sense to me. I mean, it's a guy who's physical. I think that would be a very good addition. I just think that his instincts aren't necessarily fully developed, but I don't know if he'd actually start as a corner 2 on the team, so he'd have some time to learn from the best. Giants then take Ruka. He'd be a defensive interior for this team, especially after, well, I think this pick, okay, I forgot to mention this earlier, by the way. Pick 39 is sent to the Panthers. The Panthers could honestly draft Amarius Mims based on how much they're spending on free agency. This is actually part of the trade that they ended up sending for Brian Burns. For some reason, I thought it was their later pick, but I just self-corrected myself. So this is actually no longer that pick. And actually, Edgerrin Cooper could be a legitimately good pick there for not the Giants, but now the owners of the pick, the Panthers. So got to put that in there. The Giants drafting Ruka, that'd be a bit extreme. I don't think they need to go full D-line like that. 48, the Jaguars go T'Vondre Sweat. Defensive interior, not a bad position to go ever. T'Vondre Sweat is a very unique build. 49, the Bengals go Roger Rosengarten. They overdrafted a Washington player in the second round about 4 years ago with Drew Sample. They're going to do the same here and still get someone who's roughly worth a cheaper contract on their second contract. Eagles then go Ennis Rakestraw Jr. He's going to be a full-time slot for the Eagles, essentially. Chauncey's going to be a guy who floats around. I think that people think Chauncey's just a pure slot and the slot only. That's not the case. So I think this would be a very smart move. Steelers go Spencer Rattler, like pipe down. I think even at this time that we knew that, like by the time this was released, that Russ was the quarterback. So you're essentially saying Spencer is worth a second round pick, which he's not. Talent wise is there, but his processing definitely has not been. And then, there's a reason South Carolina just was. I mean, the talent's there. The kid's good, but I don't know if he's actually going to translate to the NFL. Putting my biases aside, I don't really think I'd ever draft Spencer Rattler. I mean, until maybe the late third. And here in the second, really? Like, that's a legit quarterback move there. And you're essentially saying screw you to Kenny Pickett as well, which, I mean, I have my reservations against Kenny, but, that seems still extreme. Rams then go Braylon Trice. He dropped down to 245. To me, that's like a death sentence that shows you're not confident in the player that you are. He dropped to 245 to test well and then didn't test well. So bad move by Braylon Trice. To me, that's a big disappointment. Feels very similar to Isaiah McGuire last year. Eagles then go Peyton Wilson. Heard that his medicals are ugly. I would be surprised if he gets taken in the second. Probably will be there in the third. Browns go Bo Nix. They ended up bringing on a quarterback. So actually, this is quite funny. Good idea to go QB for the Browns, but they already got their guy in Jameis Winston. Dolphins go Theo Johnson. At this time, they did actually already bring on. They already signed the tight end from the Falcons. I'm forgetting his name off. Jonnu Smith. And so I don't really see this as a position Miami will target at 55, especially with the limited picks that they have. Defensive interior, probably with Chris Jenkins, might be a smarter move, but the Cowboys end up getting the running mate of their other Michigan defensive interior in Chris Jenkins. I think that defensive interior is never a bad position to go, so I'm not going to shame him for it. Buccaneers then draft Christian Haynes in pick 57. Talented interior offensive lineman for a team that really does need some help on the interior of the offensive line. Packers then go Tyler Nubin. I'm not a Tyler Nubin guy. There's a reason why I haven't put out safety videos. I'm just not a fan of this class at all. The more I watch, the less interested I get in it. So, hate to say it, but that's the case. I don't think the Packers should be going after Tyler Nubin at this point, but at the same time, they don't really have very many issues at all to deal with. So, maybe this is a good time to dress running back. I mean, Josh Jacobs is there on a 4-year deal. Like, this team really is very talented. I would assume they should trade up with these picks rather than stay put. Texans then go Adiza Isaac, edge rusher out of Penn State. They already got one of their guys in Danielle Hunter. Of course, this was made before that, but Danielle Hunter is now on the squad for a couple of years. Not really a position for them to go after. At 60, Buffalo Bills go Jayden Hicks. Safety is not a bad position for the Buffalo Bills to go. Jayden Hicks is a solid dude. I just think it's a bit early for him. Mason McCormick goes to the Lions. I love his energy and his mentality. I just don't think the Lions need to draft him this early. There's a lot of interior offensive linemen I would take probably above him, Cooper Beebe being one. 62, the Ravens go Renardo Green. And Renardo Green is a top 32 player for me. You see it below my face. He's a great player. There's nothing wrong with him at all. He's just, kind of a jack of all trades, master of none. His instincts actually are incredible. I could totally see him being a Baltimore Raven. Kamari Lassiter goes to the Niners. He is, I believe, my corner 13, but guess what? He's 46th on my board. The amount of people who get butthurt over Kamari Lassiter being 13th when I'm just literally just loving other players. People's comprehension skills. It will surprise you. Start your own YouTube channel, and then you'll realize that people sometimes just don't listen when you're very explicit about things, which is why I love all of you. At pick 64, the Chiefs end off the draft going Mikey Sainristil. I don't really know if that's going to be the pick that I'd want to end on. I would rather go, if you want to get someone who's a little bit more physical, go Kamal Hayden. If you want to get someone who's a little bit more flexible in terms of their role, I would go Kalen Carson to be true boundary. So that is going to be the video. Thank you so much for watching. We'll be coming out with a mock draft very, very soon. But until then, see you on the far side. Peace.